So thank you. And first of all, we would like to thank for the organizers for the possibility that we can be here with a big Hungarian team. You can see the big row of the authors. So I jump in. The first 1,000 years of the Bronze Age in the Carpathian Basin between 2500 and 1500 BC, so not the whole Bronze Age, Reinhard, is an important period in connection with the spread of bronze metallurgy and development of social inequalities in Central Europe. Changes at the close of the Copper Age and the onset of the early Bronze Age in the Carpathian Basin were explained by the arrival of population groups from the east, Yamnaya culture, and from the west, Belbeaker groups, who are brought with them the technology and know-how of bronze metallurgy. Although these first interpretations were based on an outdated theoretical background, migration is indeed an important social strategy, often used both individually and by communities. A basic question remains: who moved? People, objects, or ideas? Here we present the current state of research from the central part of the Carpathian Basin in the first 10 centuries of the Bronze Age concerning bioarchaeological data of two main periods: the Belbeaker culture between 2500 and 2200 BC, and several Middle Bronze Age, Hungarian Middle Bronze Age burial assemblages from the period between 2000 and 1500 BC. Our presentation includes stable isotopes and aDNA data, as well as results of metal composition and lead isotope analysis. According to the available compositional and lead isotope results, the raw material of copper artifacts in the late Neolithic and Copper Age Hungary can be derived from several different Balkan ore sources. First published Hungarian Bronze Age lead isotope data of the Hajdu hoard that can be dated to 1600 BC provided evidence that the copper raw material was originated from the East Alpine Mittelberg mine, similar to the Apa hoard of the same period from Romania, that are among the best parallels of the swords from the famous Nebra hoard. But what do we know about the other early and Middle Bronze Age artifacts? In cooperation with the Kurt Engelhorn Archaeometry Laboratory in Mannheim, we analyzed 22 early and Middle Bronze Age artifacts from Hungary, dated to the period from Reich Bronze Age A0 until B1. Preliminary lead isotope results suggest that the copper raw material of these finds, for example, the X from the Sárétudvari kurgan that has contacts with the Escholbrücken type X's of Northern and Eastern Europe, or the X from the Balatonakali burial with strong Unjatice relations, is coming from the Slovakian ore mountains. The fact that the Balatonakali X is among the first real tin bronze artifacts in the Carpathian Basin, dated to the 20th century BC, emphasize the importance of regional copper ore sources in our area. Based on these data, we can suggest that copper and bronze artifacts at the end of the early Bronze Age and during the main period of the Middle Bronze Age in Hungary were made of regionally explored copper by communities which had contacts with contemporaneous communities outside the Carpathian Basin. For example, the typological network of the Balatonakali X expands over 1,500 kilometers from Melz, northern Germany, until Slatina, southern Romania. The whole Balatonakali assemblage indicates strong contacts with the highest elite of the Unjatice culture, known from the Leibingen or Helmsdorf princely burials. When we detect typological connection of artifacts across wide area in Europe and the use of regional ores, then we can suppose people who maintain interregional connections. Recent studies of European Bronze Age mobility patterns based on stable isotopes and aDNA data either give evidences of mobile men and women. The great European stable isotope and genomic dataset associated with Belbeaker culture was published in Nature this year with Inigo Olalde as a first author and with our team among the co-authors. This study proves not only individual mobility, but a migration of population groups that caused the replacement of approximately 90% of Britain's gene pool within a few hundred years. This work detected limited genetic affinity between Beaker complex-associated human remains from Iberia and Central Europe, thus exclude migration as an important mechanism of spread between these two regions. Detailed analysis of the data from the Olalde study from Belbikor cemeteries in the vicinity of Budapest as our first case study, however, provide various levels of steppe-related ancestry among analyzed human remains associated with finds of the Belbikor package. Archaeogenetic investigation shows very different proportions, from 0 to 75% of steppe ancestry of roughly contemporaneous individuals. This picture is consistent with early stages of mixture between previously established local late Copper Age population and newcomers having genetic ancestry from the steppe. This means to us that the population of the Belbikor complex in Hungary was formed by a mixture of genetically very different groups. Looking at the late Copper Age, early Bronze Age samples from the mentioned study, we see mitochondrial DNA lineages that were present from the Neolithic, but also lineages that might originate from Western Europe, such as certain age haplogroups. On the other hand, I1 and I3 mitochondrial haplogroups had steppe, perhaps Yamnaya or Kordidver origin. The Y chromosomal R1b is a new lineage in the early Bronze Age of the region, which transforms the Neolithic Copper Age paternal diversity, showing mostly G2 and I haplogroup dominance. It is very interesting that Y chromosomal R1b lineage was present in 84 out of 90 analyzed Beaker-associated males in Europe outside Iberia. This shows that Beaker-associated people have a prominent role disseminating this lineage type. It's a great challenge for our international team how to determine whether the appearance of the steppe-related ancestry is associated to the Belbikor population, bringing some Kordidver gene pool, or it is associated with the real Eastern European Yamnaya groups who erected kurgans from the end of the 4th millennium BC in the Great Hungarian Plain. The first comparative analysis suggests that both scenarios contributed to the new genetic diversity of the early Bronze Age, but in different extent. Stable isotope results also suggest the frequency of non-local groups. Detected 5 non-locals from 6 examined Belbikor individuals with men, women, and a child among them. Physical anthropological investigations also observed that the Brahikran Taurit or so-called Glockenbecher skull type is unknown before the Bronze Age in the Carpathian Basin. Thus, mitochondrial DNA and Y lineages, as well as stable isotope and physical anthropological data, all suggest mobility from various directions towards the heart of the Carpathian Basin during the Belbikor period. The appearance of cremation burials became more and more widespread during the 3rd and the 2nd millennium BC. From this point of view, the analysis of special settlement pit burials are very important, as in some cases the sole possibility to discover anthropological and genetic makeup of the Middle Bronze Age period in the western and central part of Hungary. Our second case study is a pit burial from the site of Balatonkeresztúr that is located 3 kilometers from the southern shore of Lake Balaton. Here, during rescue excavations preceding the construction of the M7 motorway, a round pit was found with 8 human skeletons, 3 adults and 5 children. Due to the lack of other finds, the feature was defined as a household refuse pit utilized for mortuary purposes sometime in the late Copper Age or the early Bronze Age. However, based on the Brahikran Taurit type skull, anthropological analysis suggested Bronze Age dating. Re-investigation of the pit proved this dating thanks to 2 carbon-14 dates between the 19th and 17th century BC. The feature most probably can be associated with Transdanubian encrusted pottery culture. According to ADNA data, all 3 adults were males, and among the 5 children, 3 males and 2 females were identified. 4 children at the bottom of the pit, a boy and a girl aged around 2, as well as 2 boys aged 3, 4, and 9, 10 years. 2 adult men were found above them, and on top of the other 6 persons, an adult man and a girl aged 7 or 8 years. Radiogenic strontium isotope data from human tooth enamel of the Balatonkeresztúr individuals are consistent with local values measured from plants, water, and soil from the region to the south of Lake Balaton. Available data prove kinship ties among the individuals. The children aged 2 years were defined as siblings on maternal lineage, while one of the adult males was identified as father of the 9-10-year-old male, and the further young male was also paternally related to them. Trauma was not detected, but one of the adults has luxation, and the other 2 adult males has entesopathia, suggesting much demanding work or work. This multiple burial probably contains members of a family, supporting an interpretation that they were buried by their own local community. Our third case study is composed of several settlement pit burials of the Vatya culture from Érd, central Hungary, in the hinterland of the Százhalombatta settlement. Here a large, multi-period settlement was excavated in 2004 in connection with the rescue excavations of motorway M6. A large portion, more than 500 of the settlement features, belong to the Middle Bronze Age. 26 pits yielded human remains in various forms, 24 more or less complete skeletons, and altogether the remains of 36 individuals. These human remains from the pits are very important for bioarchaeologically because this population applied cremation burial practice nearly exclusively in urn graves, clearly separated from the settlements. Cooperation with Christian Christiansen's RISE project and Center for Geogenetics, University of Copenhagen, provided genomic haplogroup and genetic sex data of 4 individuals, as well as the carbon-14 dating of 10 pits. Radiocarbon dates of the samples were taken from the Érd inhumations prove that burial within the settlement was not a unique event, linked, for example, to a wartime conflict or an epidemic, but instead preserved the practice followed for a 500-year period between 2000 and 1500 BC. The earliest feature among the 3 chosen pits is feature number 1581, that can be dated to the late Nagyrév or early Vatya period between the 21st and the 19th century BC, at the beginning of the Middle Bronze Age in Hungary. 3 persons were found in this pit: an elderly woman lying in prone position with legs on the right side, as well as 2 children aged 2 or 3 and 10 or 12. Both children are girls. Their bodies were found in strange position. The 2-3-year-old girl's body looks like it was disturbed, while the 10-12-year-old girl was thrown by the side of the pit in prone position and probably with hands tied. Pathology show endocrinial lesions, probably caused by pulmonary infection or tuberculous meningitis. There were also 5 dogs in the pit, as well as a pig skull. The 50-60-year-old woman was buried with grave goods: 2 metal hair rings, a crescent shift pendant, a roll-headed pin, dentalium shell beads, and a bone pin. 3 pottery mugs and another fragmentary mug and a bowl were discovered in the pit. Interestingly, radiogenic strontium isotope ratio from the first molars of the 2 female children both fall a bit outside the range for fauna for the site, while their second molars are within the local range, possibly indicated that they were born somewhere else. Pit number 705 can be dated between the 20th and the 18th century BC to the second period of Middle Bronze Age. There were 4 persons' bodies thrown in this pit: an adult female lying in prone position, 2 adolescent or young adult males, and a female child aged 2 or 3 years. Beside the complete skeletons, the partial remains of an adolescent female and the upper arm of an adult female were also found. Strontium isotope data suggests that 2 females spent time away from the site. The 20-year-old appears to have grown up in a different area, since all of her molars have isotopic values that fall below the value for local fauna. The 35-40-year-olds M1 and M2 are within the local range, but her third molar is more radiogenic, possibly indicated that she spent some of her adolescence away from the site. One of the young males also has less radiogenic isotope values for all of his molars, indicated that he spent his early life and teenage years somewhere else. The same mitochondrial haplogroup, I2, of the 35-40-year-old woman and the 2-3-year-old girl suggest kinship relations, perhaps as mother and her daughter. Concerning the bad DNA preservation, paternal relationship between the 2 young male individuals cannot be excluded nor confirmed. 4 vatya mugs, one of them is decorated with cord impressions, and 2 bronze buttons were also found in the pit. Pathology indicate inflammatory disease. Anthropological investigations also indicate that the 15-18-year-old male's arm show traces of mastication by a fox or golden jackal or a smaller dog, suggested that scavengers were able to find the dead body before he was placed in the pit or in the open pit. Pit number 1039 belonged to the end of the Middle Bronze Age in Hungary between 17th and 16th century BC. A female aged 50-60 lying in the right side with a male neonatus in her arm beside a 20-25-year-old male were found in this pit. According to the archaeogenetic data, the identical mitochondrial haplotypes between the young man and the elderly woman, in addition with the identical Y chromosome sequential pattern between the young man and the neonatus boy, kinship relations can be confidently assumed. The pit can be identified as a family burial of an elderly woman, her son, and grandson. The second molar of the woman exhibits a less radiogenic strontium isotope ratio, although her first and third molar fall within the local range. This may indicate some movement in her early childhood. He provided data that can be compared to other pit burials from the western regions of Central Europe, published by Corina Knipper and her team from Central Germany, as well as Anna Pankowska and her colleagues from Moravia. In Central Germany, the results show that pit burials do not belong to a distinct section of the society based on the position of the life or the lifestyle, for example, food consumption of the deceased. Individuals discovered from the pit burials at Erd, however, might have belonged to a distinct section of the society, judging by the inhumation rite versus normative urn burials of the period in the distribution area of the Vatya pottery style. According to Pankowska and her colleagues' classification, multiple burials from Balatonkeresztúr and most of them from Erd can be defined as places of intentional pit burials. Here we have detected several possible immigrants using strontium isotope analysis. Altogether, 4 females and 1 male. This is a high rate opposite to the pit burials from Germany, which contained 10-20% of non-locals. Otherwise, the demographic picture is similar to the German or Moravian cases, and in Hungary. Old and young persons can either observed in pits at Erd from age 12 until 60. In the German cases, mainly women were identified as immigrants. Our data are similar, suggesting female exogamy. It is interesting that the Erd pits not only contained non-local persons, but also vessels with close stylistic relations with corded ware from Franzhausen, Austria, or Unjatica pottery style from Horní Dunajevice, Moravia. All these might support the hypothesis that the tradition of multiple pit burials might be connected to a non-local group of people from the western part of Central Europe. Pit burials later might be performed continuously by the Vatya community. Based on the position of the bodies, sometimes with tied hands or legs, and several observable traumatic perimortem injuries or diseases, burying people in settlement pits might have performed a subsidiary status within the community. To conclude our results, copper and bronze artifacts during the early and the main period of the Middle Bronze Age in Hungary were made of regionally explored copper bar communities which had contacts with contemporaneous communities outside the Carpathian Basin. Mitochondrial DNA and Epsilon lineages, as well as stable isotope and physical anthropological data, all suggest mobility from various directions toward the heart of the Carpathian Basin during the early Bronze Age. The population of the Bell-Beaker complex in Hungary was formed by a mixture of genetically very different groups. According to our complex bioarchaeological studies, we can hypothesize mobility in substantial scale in the Middle Bronze Age too. Current data suggest higher rate of non-local males in our first period under study, while the Middle Bronze Age can be characterized by female exogamy. Further analysis can provide more details of the starting area of these mobilities and about networks of the elite living in the Carpathian Basin. For example, the chief from the Balatonakali burial and his wide European connections. Thank you for your kind attention.